Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I am Dr. Asad Chaudhry, and I welcome all of you to this session of Parsa Echo Pakistan. I'm extremely grateful to all of you who are joining, and indeed, these are extraordinary times, and we have to raise awareness about COVID-19, especially in the community. And it does not matter about raising awareness, it also has a lot to do about clearing the misconception about the disease. So before we start, just some announcements. Please, all of you who have joined, you have to stay muted all the time. Switching off your video will improve the sound quality as well as the images that you people are receiving. If you have still difficulty, kindly ensure that less people are logged in on the Wi-Fi at your homes or wherever you have joined. Because if more people have logged in, sometime it just lead to the breakage of voice and the image that you receive. At the end, we will be taking question and answer. For this question and answer, you have a raise hand option in Zoom, which you can find at the bottom. I'm sorry, just get disconnected. So you have a raise hand option where you can ask your questions. You can also message in the chat. So that's how we will proceed. Our subject specialist today will be Dr. Bushra. But before I go to Dr. Bushra, the Payam team has done a wonderful job to arrange this meeting. So I will ask Sanan Waheed, who is President Payam, to say a few words before we move on to the subject specialist. Sanan, it's over to you, please. So you have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening, everybody. My name is Sinan Khalid Waheed, and I'm a co-founder and president of Payam. I hope you're all doing well today. I'd just like to take this time out to welcome you all to this platform. So the Project Echo Youth Ambassadors Movement is the youth arm of Project Echo, which was founded by Dr. Sanjeev Arora at the University of New Mexico. So I'm proud to say that we are the first Echo Youth Ambassadors Movement anywhere in the world. And moreover, we're also the first student led movement in Pakistan to focus on the area of public health and disease prevention through via education and awareness. So we pledge to make Payam a global movement, and I hope you will join us in our cause. Today's talk is on coronavirus, which is a deadly pandemic. As you all know, our world is being haunted by it. So through today's talk, I'm hopeful that we will be able to learn how we can actually protect ourselves and our families from the virus and play our role in protecting our fellow citizens by spreading the message that we learned today across our social network. So please join Payam if you can by messaging us on our Facebook page. And I would request Uzair Saab, who's the Project Echo coordinator, to also share our email address on the screen. Thank you for joining us today again. And my special thanks to Shayar Tariq, who is the president of the Eastern College Science Society, Dr. Asad Chaudhry, who created Payam, Dr. Amna Asghar, who is the Project Echo lead for Payam. Then we also have Ehsan Suhail Saab, who is the director of Payam at Parsa Trust, and Uzair Saab and Haris Saab from the Project Echo team. And then we also have Mr. Ali Hamza at Ferozan's Laboratories. And a special thanks to today's speaker, Dr. Bushra Ali from Fatma Memorial Hospital, Lahore, and our guest expert, Dr. Zishan Ali Janejo from Civil Hospital, Karachi. Back to you, Dr. Asad. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sinan. Usually we start round of introduction, but we have a lot of participants, so I'm going to skip that round. So I'll be going over to Dr. Bushra. Dr. Bushra is Associate Professor of Medicine at Fatma Memorial Hospital, Lahore. She has a distinguished career and she will be enlightening us about COVID-19 today. Bushra, over to you, please.
And thank you, Dr. Asad, and thank you everybody for coming over and making an effort to learn about this new novel coronavirus that we have encountered. I'll be sharing my slides, and I hope that everybody will find that their knowledge has improved by the time we come to the end of this session. Could you enable screen sharing, please? Uzair?
Yes, ma'am. You want me to share them?
You are not getting.
I get this message that the host has disabled sharing when I try to share my slides. Shall I try again?
Yes.
No, I keep getting this message. Host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, wait. Ma'am, kindly check it now. Can you share it?
Honey, now I can do it.
Okay.
So as Dr. Asad has already introduced me, I am working at Fatma Memorial Hospital. Starting with this virus, let's find out what this COVID-19 is. COVID-19 stands for the coronavirus disease 2019, and this is a disease that is caused by the severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2. There has already been a coronavirus 1, and the other examples are the SARS virus that was the epidemic was there in 2004 to 2006. But the problem is that these two viruses were contained to a particular region only, including the Middle Eastern respiratory virus also. But this is a virus that has become a pandemic, as we already know. So these two terms are not interchangeable. The name of the virus is SARS-CoV-2 and the disease is COVID-19. How does it get transmitted? The virus jumped from bats and pangolins to man. This happened in Wuhan. We already know most of the history. Once man had acquired the infection, the virus underwent adaptations in undetected human-to-human transmissions by respiratory droplet infection. So initially it was in animals, moved to man, from man to man, then the infection has spread through respiratory droplets. Now in late November or early December 2019, till that time the species jump occurred. And it was during that time that infection gradually started to increase to alarming levels when it was late December or January until now. Now, how does it spread? From man to man, this is how it will spread. Let's say a person has sneezed, if a person coughs on that person's on you and including on his own hands. Now this is a distance that is called close contact. That is 6 feet or less will be close contact in terms of coronavirus. So somebody who is within 6 feet, an ill person has sneezed or coughed, the other person can inhale those viruses in the form of droplets and will get infected. The other modality is that the same person in a few minutes or seconds shakes hands with another person. Now the virus has got transferred to that other person and this person will now touch the hands, the face or the nose or the eyes, and will end up with an infection. So it is directly inhalation, a direct inhalation, but there is also contamination of the hands that has transferred the infection to the nose, eyes, that is the mucous membranes and the mouth, and caused an infection. This is typical of a respiratory droplet infection spread. The other modality is through the fomites, what we call, because the virus can be transmitted through aerosols also. This is also an aerosol. The infection that is transmitted by sneezing or coughing will also be called an aerosol because the virus is suspended in the air. But in the toilet, we know that an infected person's stool contains the virus. So once infected, once the stool is flushed, there will be aerosols all over the washroom, and these aerosols will be there on the person's hands also. Let's say the patient does not wash his hands properly. He will be leaving one of these or several of these viruses on the door handle. These are called fomites. Now, another person who walks in, maybe uses the washroom also, goes out, opens the door with this handle, will have his hands infected, although he or she had properly washed their hands. Now, currency notes also appear to be culprits. This is not something proven, but it did happen in China that in order to completely stop the transmission of infection, they removed the used notes from circulation and disinfected them and even quarantined them for 2 weeks. And emergency issuance of new banknotes was carried out in February 2020. But it is understandable that contaminated hands can transmit the virus to contaminated notes. And currency notes have long been known to be source of infection. Now, how do you protect yourselves? Step 1, you wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds after going to a public place, after blowing your nose, coughing or sneezing, and especially after your trips to the washroom before eating your food. That's standard. And if soap and water are not available, hand sanitizer can be used, but the level of alcohol or the percentage of alcohol has to be at least 60%. All surfaces of your hands should be covered with the hand sanitizer, and the hands have to be rubbed till the hands feel dry. And one should avoid touching eyes, nose, and mouth with unwashed hands. Now, what is the best method of washing hands? Take an adequate amount of soap, rub the soap and water from palm to palm, then between fingers, back of hands, base of thumbs, back of fingers, fingernails, wrists, and rinse and wipe dry. But after this, I have added that this single-use towel can be used to turn off the faucet also. This is because you do not want to catch the virus that has been left previously by somebody else and get your hands infected. So this is the most clean or hygienic method of washing hands, which will certainly get rid of the viruses and other bacteria also if present on your hands. Apart from this, there should be no mass gathering. Shopping malls, funerals, parties, restaurants, weddings, they need to be avoided. There should be no hugs and handshakes, which is called social distancing. One should try and work from home if possible, and travel should be restricted to critical travel only. Now, this is what is called respiratory etiquette or cough etiquette. You might have heard of the term circulating. This is because somebody should be coughing or sneezing in the flexed elbow and not onto his or her own hands, because that is another risk of getting the virus on your hands and then transmitting it to others. So the elbow will not be coming into contact with anybody else. So this is called respiratory etiquette. Apart from that, one should stay at home if there is a cough, there is a nasal congestion or fever, and if the disease is moderate in symptoms, I'll tell you what mild, moderate, severe ones are, then one should try and stay at home. Now, who is supposed to wear a mask? If one is sick, you should wear a mask when you are around other people if you are sick, and before you enter the healthcare provider's office. But we must remember that masks are in short supply. Not everybody can wear a mask, so they should be left to people who are caregivers of the sick. The sick people, yes, they should be wearing it, but also the caregivers of those who are actually sick. If you are not sick, nobody needs to wear a mask unless you are caring for another sick person, or that sick person feels short of breath or claustrophobic. If that person wears a mask, then the caregiver it should be mandatory for the caregiver to be wearing a mask while taking care of the sick patient. Now, cleaning and disinfecting daily is important. This is because the virus tends to stay on certain surfaces. This diagram points towards it. On copper, it stays up to 4 hours. On cardboard, up to 24 hours. Plastic, 2 to 3 days. Stainless steel, 2 to 3 days. And aerosols, up to 3 hours. So disinfection at least once a day of frequently used surfaces is mandatory in order to avoid infection. Which disinfectant to use? The simplest is making a bleach solution, in which there should be 1/3 cup or 5 tablespoons of bleach in 1 gallon of water. And this will be effective against coronaviruses, or alcohol solutions up to 70% can be used. But I have added a website. This website is from the FDA, and FDA has posted this on their website. This is Environment Protection Agency website, which tells you about which disinfectants will help you get rid of the virus or clean the virus. So you can match with the disinfectant that you are using at home. Now, if somebody has to go to a workplace other than the healthcare facilities, what should that person do? One, work from home whenever and wherever possible. It has been stressed upon repeatedly. Audio or video conferencing for meetings would be a good idea, and not to gather in large numbers in the office that somebody has to go to, and not to form groups in the cafeteria, in the water cooler, in the common rooms, and frequent hand hygiene, as has been described, and frequent and meticulous cleaning of common areas and surfaces is important. Now, these are counters, tabletops, the faucets that I mentioned, computer surfaces, and the keyboard, the mouse. These need to be cleaned thoroughly. Now, how do you protect children? Protection of children is carried out by hand hygiene, by cleaning and disinfecting the surfaces that they frequently touch, and their toys also. Children should have limited time that they spend with older adults, relatives, and people who have serious underlying medical conditions. And their washable plush toys should be laundered. Now, why should we limit the time that the children spend with their elderly? This is because the elderly have we tend to find that the underlying medical conditions of diabetes or hypertension or liver or kidney disease are more common amongst the elderly. And children harbor infection. They can harbor infection and transmit it even if they themselves have proven to have milder symptoms. And this is why they should stay away from their elderly in case they transmit the infection to their elderly relatives. Children do not need to wear a mask if the child himself or herself is healthy. She or he does not need to wear a mask. How do we protect the elderly? As already described, hand hygiene, limit time with other relatives and children, cleaning and disinfecting of the surfaces, and avoiding handshakes. Now, we know from literature that the elderly are the ones who tend to have severe disease, and their mortality is also higher. This is because I'll tell you why. The risk of infection is higher and the risk of severe disease is also high, because these are the people who suffer from liver and kidney and lung diseases, or are diabetic and have hypertension, or are on medication to lower their immunity. Now, this is a term that you might have heard about repeatedly, that is called flattening the curve. Now, flattening the curve means that the question keeps arising: is there immunity against the virus? It is too soon to say whether there will be lifelong immunity against coronavirus if encountered today. But we know from our past history, which includes smallpox and it also includes polio, in which herd immunity was aimed for. Herd immunity is when 60% of the population has had the viral infection, and it is thought that the rest of the 40% will be protected against this infection if they will be protected even if they have never encountered the infection, because the other 60% are immune, and the virus since it will not be causing an infection, it will not be spreading. Those 40% will also be safe from it. But in this coronavirus scenario, how soon do we encounter this herd immunity depends on how well we self-isolate and practice social distancing. Because if you look at the graph is number of cases plotted against the time since first case. So the longer the time duration, the flatter the curve will be. If there is a large number of people encountering the infection or getting the infection in a short period of time, that is going to result in a peak. And this peak will put a burden on the healthcare system. But if we somehow stagger the number of cases over the period of time by this isolation and social distancing, we will be able to flatten the curve. This is why without protective measures, as you can see in the diagram, it is quite high. But with protective measures, we have flattened the curve. This has been achieved in South Korea and in China also. And unless and until we also start practicing this self-isolation and social distancing, we will not be able to flatten the curve or decrease the number of cases in our population. So it refers to the idea of slowing the spread so that fewer people encounter it. Please remember that self-isolation and social distancing is not going to turn the number of new cases to zero, but at least they will be staggered over time, and less burden on the healthcare system will be there. Plus, there will be less transmission of the virus also. Now, what are the symptoms? They develop 2 days to 2 weeks following exposure to the virus. Most frequently, there is cough, fever, sore throat, and shortness of breath. These are less frequently encountered, but they can be there: fatigue, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, nasal congestion, headache, aches and pains. Aches and pains, we call it in our medical terminology myalgias. Now, these symptoms can be divided into mild, moderate, and severe. Mild ones are when the patient has just a bit of fatigue, aches and pains, but there is no evidence of pneumonia, bit of nasal congestion, maybe nauseous, and has diarrhea also. Moderate symptoms are when there is fever and there is pneumonia on radiological imaging. And severe case, which will require hospitalization, is when the patient has shortness of breath, respiratory rate is more than 30 per minute, the saturation is less than 93%. Saturation is the percentage of oxygen in the blood. And since all of us have our smartphones, most of the smartphones can check the user's saturation of oxygen, so it can be even done at home. Pneumonia present on chest X-ray, shock, which is low blood pressure to a certain level, respiratory failure requiring mechanical ventilation, and other organ failure requiring ICU care. Now, please remember that this severe disease has been found to be more common in the elderly who have encountered it, but people have died in their younger age also because of these complications. How do you diagnose the infection? The virus needs to be detected in the nasopharyngeal swab, in the stool, in the blood, or bronchoalveolar lavage. Now, the nasopharyngeal swab is the most commonly used test. Less so in the stool and blood. It has also been noticed that the virus has continued to be present in the stool despite clearance in the respiratory secretions. Bronchoalveolar lavage is done only if required and only if clinically indicated, because this procedure itself causes aerosol production, and that's something that we need to avoid in order to prevent the transmission of infection. The virus will be detected by the real-time reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction. There are new assays in the pipeline. An X-ray or a CT chest will not diagnose coronavirus, but it will diagnose the pneumonia that has been suspected as a result of the infection. Other laboratory investigations that we might find is raised C-reactive protein. Now, C-reactive protein is an acute phase reactant. In medical terms, it is called an acute phase reactant, but for ease of understanding, this test it shows that there is some kind of an inflammation going on in some part of the body. Raised ALT, which means the liver is also affected. Prothrombin time will be raised, again, an indicator that the liver is also affected, and creatine kinase will be raised. This points towards the involvement of the heart and the muscles. Lymphopenia on complete blood count, and there will be normal procalcitonin levels. Normal procalcitonin levels mean that the patient is not suffering from a bacterial infection, and this is a viral infection. Raised procalcitonin levels point towards a bacterial infection. How do we treat it? Treatment is symptomatic. Paracetamol for fever, headache, aches and pains, and adequate hydration should be aimed for. There is limited data on these and many other treatment modalities that are being researched upon, but none have reached the recommendation level, and they cannot be recommended. It would be catastrophic if any of these medications are used without any recommendations or off-label, because there are potential side effects, especially the first one. It has resulted in deaths because of the raised QT interval that is a cardiac or heart complication. Now, what to do if there is a person who has mild or moderate symptoms and has been advised to stay at home? Isolate that patient, ideally in a separate room with a separate bathroom. Use face masks. The sick person should wear a face mask, and one should also protect herself or himself, who is taking care of the patient, by wearing his face mask. Protective gear if you are going to be around body fluids. Body fluids are blood, mucus, and a face mask, gown, and gloves should be worn. But hand hygiene must be ensured. And one should clean the surfaces of that room and the bathroom frequently. This includes, as I said, counters, bedside tables, doorknobs, computers, phones, and bathroom surfaces, and check with the cleaning product whether or not it covers the coronavirus. And washing of hands is important. Now, management of a contact. Now, this was about a patient who has developed an infection. How do you take care of that person? But what about you yourself? You are a contact. If there is a confirmed case and there is a contact, then that contact should be tested and isolated at a distance of more than 6 feet at least. And an asymptomatic contact of an asymptomatic contact does not need to be separated, but should be staying at home. They should be practicing hygienic measures, general preventive measures only, but no need of quarantine. The contact needs to be quarantined. Now let's go through a few myth busters. A lot of them are circulating on the social media. The first is, if there is a vaccination against Haemophilus influenzae or pneumococcal vaccine has been administered, does that mean that the person is immune or protected against coronavirus also? The answer is no. The person is not infected. This is a new virus, needs its own vaccine, upon which work is in progress, but there is no vaccine available at the moment. The best answer is prevention. What about rinsing your nose with saline, or drinking hot water, or drinking tea, or blowing hot air through the mouth? That is not going to work. These are things that are of no proven benefit as far as COVID-19 is concerned. If the new coronavirus will still get transmitted in the hot and humid climates, although we are anxiously waiting for that weather, but till now the evidence has proven against it. The answer appears to be social distancing and self-isolation if somebody is infected. There are no antibiotics that will be that are effective against coronavirus, and eating garlic will not be of any help if the patient wants to, or if a person wants to get protected against coronavirus. This is important, as I stressed earlier, that it is not just the elderly people who are susceptible to the infection. All age groups are susceptible. There can be a difference in the severity of the disease. Yes, the elderly people are more liable to develop infections or maybe die from the infection, but it doesn't mean that the younger people are completely protected and nothing will go wrong for them. There have been deaths amongst the younger people also, so everybody has to be careful. Pets cannot transmit the infection. This coronavirus does not, although, confer protection from other viruses or other bacteria that you can encounter from your pets. So washing hands is important. Let's go to a few frequently asked questions. Who is at risk? As I said earlier in my talk, older age people, age more than 65, diabetes, hypertension, chronic lung disease, chronic liver disease, chronic kidney disease, and reduced immunity. There are two kinds of people who have reduced immunity. One, medication that is being given to reduce immunity. The person might be suffering from some kind of an autoimmune condition in which patient will be on drugs such as steroids to reduce immunity, but there are other drugs also. The person might have undergone a liver or kidney transplant, and that person is already on immunosuppressants. People who are suffering from cancers are on chemotherapeutic medication. They also have poor immunity because of suppression of their bone marrow. And people who have poorly controlled diabetes are also have reduced immunity. And malnutrition contributes towards reduced immunity. Now, who should be tested? Not everybody who thinks that he or she has COVID-19 needs to be tested. This is because the resources are limited. Even in the richest countries of the world, they are not testing everybody. They are testing only these three kinds of people, and other people who have mild or moderate disease are usually asked to rest at home and to tide over the time of infection, which goes away in 2 weeks. So, whom should we test? Hospitalized patients with compatible signs and symptoms in the interest of infection control. So we know who is infected within the hospital, has signs and symptoms. We don't want the healthcare workers to contract the infection from them, and the other patients also need to be protected. High-risk symptomatic patients, that is older patients and patients who have underlying conditions, as I said, they are at higher risk and they can develop complications. Or symptomatic people who have had close contact with an individual who had a coronavirus, or who have traveled from affected geographic areas within 14 days of symptom onset. This is why self-quarantine is being stressed upon for people who have traveled, and they should be completing at least 2 weeks of quarantine at their homes if they have traveled across the world. Now, every country has the case, but Iran and China were initially on the list. Is this virus linked to bioterrorism? The genetic sequencing was given out by China very early during the course of this pandemic, and it has been revealed that no, it has not been derived from any other previous backbone. It is a natural evolution of the virus, and it is not man-made. What about pregnant women and nursing mothers? There is no data so far that pregnant women will have a more severe infection or they are at a risk of the illness, but prevention still remains better than cure. The infection, it does not get transmitted to the unborn baby, but general precautions must be followed by the pregnant women of hygiene and isolation, especially if they develop the infection. The interesting part is that the mother can transmit the infection to the baby whom she is nursing, because that baby is in close proximity to the infected mother, and that is how the baby will develop an infection. And how do we prevent it? Ask the mother to extract the milk through the breast pump, and then that milk can be fed to the baby, because we know that breast milk otherwise is very healthy and prevents several illnesses. Therefore, one should not stop the mother from feeding the baby, but a healthy household member can feed the baby through the milk, through a bottle, and the milk can be extracted by a breast pump. The virus is not transmitted in the milk itself, it's not excreted in it. Now, this is a website that I have posted here. This is the local guidance that is available. This is part of the National Action Plan, and a very comprehensive document includes what you should do if you have encountered a patient, what you should do if you yourself fall ill, and it also includes the burial procedure for burial of patients who have died of the coronavirus, step by step. These recommendations are also available by the Sindh Healthcare Commission, by the Punjab Healthcare Commission, and in the Western world, I saw it posted by the National Burial Council in the UK. Apart from this, my main source throughout this presentation has been the CDC and the WHO. So I think the House is open for questions now. Thank you.
Thank you, Bushra. Thank you very much. Well done. Thank you for a very nice and comprehensive presentation on COVID-19. We have young audience here. I'm sure they will be having some questions.